Neil McAvoy, leader of Propel, Wales' brand new political party. I'm outside the Royal Gwent. I'm with Celia Jones. Celia is one of our list candidates in South Wales East, and Celia has been, I would say, inspired to stand for election for Propel because of her very, very difficult and shocking, actually, personal experience. Celia's late partner, Brian Boulton, was taken into hospital in September 2017, and later it was found that a tumour the size of a tennis ball went undiagnosed. When Brian was in the Royal Gwent, Celia was not allowed to visit him. Only allowed for a very short time. A do not resuscitate notice was put on him unlawfully. More than that, a Dole's form was also signed wrongly. He was said to have no next of kin, and they therefore took away his rights. They took away his voice. He wanted to leave hospital. He was not allowed. He was given an injection wrongfully, and 90 minutes later, Brian passed away. They say there was no connection between the injection and Brian passing away. The whole point of this video is for Celia to be Brian's voice this evening. So please stay with us. Put up any comments, ask any questions, because Celia's going to be Brian's voice tonight. And in a political sense, Propel is here to bring solutions. And what we want in Wales is what we're calling a Public Services Investigator. We want that person to be elected, and we want that person to replace the Ombudsman and to replace the complaints procedures above stage 1, so that many, many injustices in Wales in the public sector to do with health boards, local educational authorities, children's services, adult services, got a whole list of cases on my books. What we want are independent investigations, and if we get the Public Services Investigator, she or he will be elected, and what we will have is one of those in each county area. The point of them being elected is that they have their own power, they have their own authority, and the only stipulation is they need not to have to be involved in party politics for the previous 10 years. So we don't have any usual suspects. We don't have people controlled by politicians, as happens now. Okay, we're going to swing round now and turn the camera around. We're going to talk to Celia, and Celia's going to give you her story, Brian's story, and a shocking experience. Okay, Celia.
Thank you, Neil.
Switch the camera around. So, Celia, tell us. Well, I've explained to everybody what has happened, but I'm interested in knowing what happened after the event. And I would say you have a medical background. You're from a medical family, and also you used to be a nurse, didn't you?
Yes. Well, these are the facts. This is my victim impact statement. Brian died on the 27th of September. He was forced to die alone, dehydrated, malnourished, and he was deprived of any human contact. Investigated by the Public Service Ombudsman of Wales, and serious failings and injustices were found. However, there's been no accountability as yet. The 4 major failings: the lack of diagnosis of the tennis ball-sized tumour in his esophagus, only found on autopsy despite a CT scan 30 days earlier missing it, and other tumours. Why were there 2 death certificates?
You're back on, Celia. Sorry, everyone. We dropped off then. with the nets. Yeah, Celia, do you want to carry on?
Okay, the false and malicious accusations against me, they prevented me seeing him on the 27th. I was allowed 2 hours per week, and thereby they violated their hospital policy and breached both our human rights. However, 2 hours a week is nothing. The medication error which occurred on the 27th of September at 16:20, they admit it, but they don't admit that it killed him. However, 90 minutes later he was dead. The hospital covered this up. It only came to light months later. The accusations of me giving an unprescribed furosemide, this has all been proven to be incorrect. The prescriptions I have here with me, and in the notes Brian tells them he takes his own medication. The do not resuscitate form, which was completed covertly on the 20th of September, saying he had no relatives and was confused. Why no relatives? They were listed in the notes. The deprivation of liberty form, which was done on the 26th of September, completed by 2 nurses. Again, no relatives, and lots of total inaccuracies by these 2 nurses. Brian was desperate to come home and kept ringing me to get him out of there as if he didn't feel safe. The Ombudsman has held about the breaches of human rights. My forensic expert says the temporal association of this injection is too great to be ignored. They were not transparent. The Ombudsman held that the then coroner was misled and not given the whole information. And this is just deplorable that nobody has been held to account. I'll show you the do not resuscitate form. That is a do not resuscitate form stating that he has no relatives, and it's redacted. But conveniently, the GMC number is there, so we know who it is. I also have here the Doles form. This is the Doles form, heavily redacted, inaccuracies, wrong address. The prescriptions. So what I want out of this is I want people to feel safe when they go in hospital. I want patient safety to be paramount. At the moment, patients aren't safe. Not if this thing can happen to Brian. It can happen to anybody, and it cannot be allowed to happen to anybody ever again.
So, Celia, the authorities, did they look at this seriously? They take your complaint seriously? What has happened in terms of recourse for Brian and for you?
Well, absolutely nothing apart from an apology, which was very half-hearted by the health board, and recommendations which, according to my Freedom of Information investigations, have not been followed or carried out, because the templates that were supposed to be put in have not been put in. I'm only going on Freedom of Information requests here. The do not resuscitate orders are very topical at the moment with the COVID crisis, and there are laws. This is the law. A lady called Janet Tracy.
Yeah, just say that you've got Mandy Adams. Just want to correct you there, Mandy. That's talk about truth under a bent Tory government. This is actually a Labour government in Wales, Mandy. So what you have here is a Labour politicians policing, or actually it's their system. Celia, there were things which were found to be unreliable in terms of the notes that were filled out.
Poor record keeping, yeah. Typewritten added sheets. The Ombudsman has called this out, but there has been no criminal investigation.
So what is your experience with the Gwent police force? How have they dealt with this?
Pussyfooted around the hospital. There's been no proper investigation. I've had to make a complaint about lack of investigation, and as I said, nobody has been held to account. They have to be held to account.
Okay, you say that nobody's been held to account. You're correct on that. How has that made you feel as not only grieving the loss of your partner of decades, but how, as well as the grief, not being taken seriously? And
I was made to feel dirty and small. I was denigrated. I was denigrated by the hospital. I am an NHS whistleblower, and apart from grieving, this is just It shouldn't happen in a civilised society. We need accountability, we need candour, we need transparency and truth. That's all anybody ever wants, is the truth. And that's the easiest thing to do, is to tell the truth.
So what has your experience been of the internal complaints procedures and the Ombudsman? Have they been fit for purpose?
The hospital complaint system was absolutely appalling. They didn't even acknowledge my complaint. And when they did, they sent it to the wrong address, to an address I'd never lived in. The Ombudsman's, upheld all my complaints, but it took almost 18 months, which was a very, very long time.
And so they upheld your complaints. What happened to the hospital through the Ombudsman? Was there compensation?
There was a very small amount of compensation. I was told they were told to apologise to me. The apology came on the very last day of the month. They had a month to do it. Then they had other things to do, and these recommendations were not followed up to the day because they've said that there was a delay with the COVID crisis.
Has anyone lost their job, Celia?
Nobody has lost their job, as far as I'm aware.
So,
in fact, they've probably been promoted.
So you had Brian in hospital. You had a do not resuscitate wrongly put in place.
Yeah, I found this 10 months after he died when I went through the notes and the doles form.
It took 10 months to find out that had happened.
Yeah, and the doles, and when I read the doles, it was absolutely, unbelievable, shocking.
So
the NMC need to be accountable. The NMC need to...
Just to explain to everyone, the doles form is...
It's a legal document.
When you have your liberty taken away, your freedom to choose what you do.
Yes. People cannot have a doles unless they have no capacity. Brian was fully compos mentis. He was able to make a decision. The capacity test that was done held that he had capacity, so why in heaven's name was there a doles form?
So you had
He was falsely imprisoned in this hospital.
I think false imprisonment is certainly something that should be looked at. Also, the wrongly filled in form, which you've seen there, which said that he had no
relatives on either of the sheets.
When they knew you were literally stone's throw away.
Well, I was in the room.
Yeah. And so you knew none of this until...
I knew none of it until 10 months later when I went through the notes.
Through your own investigations?
Yeah, my own investigations.
What's your view of, let's say, the chair of the health board, the chief executive? Have they helped you in your grieving process, or have they not?
No, they haven't helped me. They've been positively defensive, obstructive, and no, they haven't helped at all.
Okay, the police now?
I would like an honest investigation by the police.
If any of you guys out there are watching, what you could do is you could write to the Chief Constable of the Gwent Police, you could write to the Police Commissioner, mainly the Chief Constable I think, and demand a proper investigation.
I mean, this thing, I cannot be the only person who suffered. I know I'm not. But Brian died tragically, and, the fact that I wasn't there is appalling. When he was asking for me and they didn't ring me. They didn't even tell me that he was unwell, seriously unwell, and I arrived after he died.
So we talked earlier about how you really dislike the drive here.
Oh, I don't go past this hospital.
The phone call that you took, what did they say to you when they called to tell you about Brian?
They called and said that you need to come in, he's acutely unwell. And I thought it was a joke because I'd only spoken to him 2 hours before and he wanted to come home. But I shot here with a friend. She met me here. We met 2 doctors. On the way here, I rang up and the nurse said, "Oh, you're too late, he's dead now." I mean, I could have gone into a bus. When I spoke to her about this, she said, "Well, you wouldn't have wanted me to lie." Very callous. not the way I've ever behaved.
So you're now standing for election for Propel. We have the policy of a public services investigator. Is that what you want to see in Wales?
Yes, I want a public service investigator, not just for hospitals, for all public services, councils, so that there has to be accountability, that there cannot be any more cover-ups. We have to stop the cover-ups.
Okay. Thanks, Celia. I know that was very difficult for Celia. And I mean, can anybody imagine to have your loved one taken into hospital, to be stopped from seeing your loved one, actually wrongly stopped? Celia was wrongly stopped from seeing Brian, and then to find out in that way, and then to find out 10 months later that forms have been signed unlawfully, that notes are not reliable, allegations made about Celia were wrong and proven to be wrong, and yet we have a chief executive in the Royal Gwent, we have a chair of the health boards, we have the chief constable of the police sat back, in my opinion, not doing their jobs. And this takes me back to the Robbie Powell case, and Will Powell, who I spoke to in August last year, because as well as having a public services investigator, we'll do a separate video, I think, on Robbie's law. Because what we want in law in Wales is that health professionals and other professionals have a duty to tell you the truth when things go wrong, because at the moment they haven't, and we all assume that they do, but they don't. So I just want to recap now for everyone, you may just be tuning in, but Celia Jones is one of our candidates in South East Wales. So if you give your second vote to Propel, we're standing all over South East Wales, Gwent, Torfaen, Caerphilly, Blaenau Gwent. You give us your second vote, give it to Celia as one of our candidates, and what we will do is try and ensure that we have a public services investigator. What that means is that person in each area, there will be one overall as well, that person will be elected. That will give them their own authority, so they won't have to rely on politicians. One of the conditions will be that they will have to not to have been involved in party politics for the previous 10 years. So we're not going to get the usual suspects. And they will have full power to investigate people like, well, the people who've come up on this video earlier, the people who should have been held accountable. What we have now is rank unaccountability, and this is another type of corruption that we have in Wales, where families suffer. I've met families all over Wales, health boards, local education authorities, children's services, adult services. Before I got elected to our parliament, I never realised just how unjust Wales is. And that's one of the reasons why we formed Propel, to do something about it. And I'm really proud of Celia sitting here tonight. I don't think anyone can realise how difficult that was. And to be so composed, Celia, and to put across what happened in such a succinct way. So well done, Celia. I'm really proud of you doing that. We're going to give you a voice. We're going to give Brian a voice. And we want action. So those of you out there, support Propel. Let's get these policies enacted by getting us into that Senedd, into the Welsh Parliament, as a group of politicians, there to act, there to propel Wales forward. We are Propel, and we're going to change our country. Diolch yn fawr.